At the very beginning of the introduction of motor trucks in the late 1910s into the early 1920s, there was a problem in how this newfangled contraption would replace the established means of transporting goods. Horse and wagons and railroads had been the primary ways of moving freight in both long and short distances. For the new motor truck to become a useful means of transporting freight, it had to be better than the horse-driven teams or steam engines on rails. Something better suited for trucks. A product distribution problem that would make motor trucks only to be able to solve it. In this video, we'll look at one product that was almost meant to be transported by truck. In a newspaper article dated Wednesday, July 16th of 1919, was a story entitled, "Transporting Modern Beer is a Problem." The article was in the Pottsville, Pennsylvania Republican newspaper. It said the brewers have all sorts of trouble these days. Theirs is far from a happy lot. They not only have election troubles, sale fluctuations, expense increases, supply deficiency, saloon rental holdups, every kind of employee's annoyance imaginable. But these days, with most of their worst annoyance is to get their beer transported in the loaded kegs from the brewery to the various district and town agents for distribution to all the saloons, and then to get the empties back to the brewery again. What was all the election trouble about? Well, this was 1919, a year before prohibition. So in a year, these brewers were worried if they would even be able to make beer anymore because the country was headed toward prohibition. So they had to make all the money they could while they could because they didn't know how the vote was going to go. The railroads would not handle beer under the new conditions. This also applies to all alcoholic beverages that are on the taboo list. This includes the railroad freight, the express matter, and special messenger transportation. Nothing for the brewers and the whiskey people as far as transportation goes over the railroads. There was industrial alcohol that was on the list of banned freight to be carried on the railroads, unless it had been chemically changed to not be used in making whiskey. At the time, there were many alcoholic liquids that were added to the list of prohibited items on the railroads, and the new trucking industry could support transporting the products. Another reason why trucks were so important in the early years of the trucking industry. In order to make up the lack of regular transportation, the brewers are at times put to anxiety, annoyance, and big expense. Even beer spoils if it is not properly handled in transportation, and in midsummer it must always be kept in sight, if not within contact constantly, every second, of great chunks of ice. This was easily taken care of when beer was shipped in railroad cars, but now that it is entirely shipped by wagons and motor vehicles, the icing work is of trouble and expense. You have to remember that this was early in the motor truck industry, and refrigerated trailers and insulated trailers had not been invented yet. So they had to constantly stop for ice, and in summer, they'd have to stop a whole lot more. So even though the industry was new, there were a lot of things that hadn't come along yet, and refrigerated trailers was one of those things. The Pottsville and other county brewers are on rush, days hard to put their beer to destination, and every kind of vehicle is pressed into service. That's why you see many old decrepit animals and half broken down vehicles transporting beer these days. Everything must be used at out times, and the regulars, as well as every kind of reserve, must be called in to be utilized. And then there isn't enough to go around. It seems everybody knew what was coming, prohibition, so they were wanting to get as many of their product out to the stores and saloons that they could. They must have sensed that it was coming and they were trying to make all the money they could. The highways are full of beer trucks and all kinds of beer wagons. It is quite common to see big motor trucks piled full of empty or loaded beer kegs on our streets these days, with the vehicles labeled Philadelphia, Harrisburg, Lebanon, Reading, Shamokin, Mount Carmel, Girardville, Shenandoah, Hazleton, Kamakwa, and on through the list of nearby and far distant towns. They are all here with the empties and going out with the loaded in order to replace the refusal of the railroads under the law to handle the beer. That's quite a list of towns in northeast Pennsylvania with breweries. In fact, in 1919, in the U.S., there were 1,179 different breweries. Determining the exact number of breweries in Pennsylvania in 1919 is difficult due to the impending start of Prohibition in 1920. Pennsylvania did have a strong brewing history, and a lot of the breweries were concentrated in areas like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Pottsville, where this article came from. One of the local brewers has made an arrangement with all of the big truck companies that bring general merchandise here from outlying points that they will guarantee them full loads going back. Not only do we see the big freight motor trucks here in abundance to handle the beer, but it is quite common now to see the huckster and farm wagons with 4 and 6 heads of animals tugging the beer supplies along, in and out of the town and along the highways in all directions. So when you get your 2 3/4% brown colored liquid that is these days called beer, just remember that there has been much trouble to transport it to your favorite restaurant or hotel bar. And that is why the glasses are small and the price high. But the people will have it as long as they can get it, no matter what the trouble and expense. So there you have it. That's the reason, one of the reasons that motor trucks became so important in 1919. Railroads couldn't haul beer, but trucks could. Just another place in history of the trucking industry. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.